My heart raced as I rushed around the Havenbrook Community Center, ensuring every detail was perfect for Derek's high school graduation ceremony. This day marked not only the culmination of his academic journey, but the beginning of a new chapter for our family. Glancing at my watch, I realized Roland should have arrived by now. He knew how important this milestone was for Derek and me. Just as worry started to settle in, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Roland, "Hey babe, listen, I'm so sorry, but I can't make it to Derek's graduation." Roland's voice crackled through the line. "An emergency came up at work, and I need to handle it. You know how it is." My heart sank. This was the third time in recent months he had prioritized work over family. "Are you serious, Roland? Derek has been looking forward to you being here. It means everything to him." "I don't have a choice, Althea. This is a make-or-break deal for the company. You know I would be there if I could." His dismissive tone stung like vinegar on an open wound. Gritting my teeth, I forced a smile as Derek approached, beaming with pride. "Everything okay, Mom?" "Of course, honey," I lied, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Your father is just tied up at work again, but he's so proud of you." Derek's face fell, his broad shoulders slumping. "It's fine, I get it. He's busy as usual." The disappointment in his voice was like a dagger to my heart. As the ceremony began, I took my seat, pasting on a mask of happiness while a storm of emotions raged within me. Roland's constant absence had become a familiar pattern, but watching Derek's crestfallen expression as he scanned the crowd struck a nerve. During the recessional, I spotted Roland's business partner, Thomas, accompanied by his wife and children. A pang of envy pierced my chest at the sight of their supportive family unit. How many times had I wished for Roland to be that present, that devoted? Later that evening, as Derek and his sister Lily celebrated with friends, I found myself alone in the kitchen, nursing a glass of wine. Roland's indifference had become increasingly difficult to bear. Was this how our family life was destined to unfold? A facade of normalcy masking deep resentments? The jarring vibration of my phone shattered my reverie. It was a text from Roland. "Sorry again about today. Got caught up putting out fires at the office. It won't happen again, I promise." Those empty words held no comfort as I stared at the screen, a tempest of emotions swirling within me. This was far from the first broken promise, and I feared it wouldn't be the last. Something had to change, even if it meant shattering the fragile illusion we'd been living. Over the following weeks, Roland's absences became more frequent, his excuses increasingly flimsy. A nagging suspicion took root. Was there more to his business emergencies than he let on? One night, as he hurriedly tied his silk tie, I feigned nonchalance. "Working late again? You know how it is, babe. Big acquisition in the works. I may not be home until late." He leaned in for a perfunctory peck on the cheek. As he headed for the door, I caught a whiff of an unfamiliar floral fragrance lingering on his shirt collar. My heart pounded as realization washed over me. There had to be another explanation, didn't there? The next evening, I decided to follow him after he left for his office. I tailed his sleek sports car through the winding streets until he pulled into the parking garage of an upscale high-rise. Anxiety gripped my chest as I watched Roland exit the vehicle and straighten his suit. He can't be. No, he wouldn't. My mind grappled with the prospect of infidelity as he disappeared into the lobby. I waited in purgatory for what felt like an eternity. Then, the unmistakable sight of Roland emerging, accompanied by a stunning young woman in a tight red dress, her flawless features radiating an unsettling allure. The world crumbled beneath me as they strolled arm in arm to Roland's car, exchanging hushed laughter. This wasn't a business meeting. This was an affair, laid bare in its tawdry glory. When Roland returned home well past midnight, I sat in stony silence, cradling the damning evidence burning in my hands. Photos of him and his mistress. "Althea? You're still up?" His breezy indifference was like a slap across the face. I turned to face him, fury simmering behind my eyes. "Who is she, Roland?" He froze, the color draining from his face as I thrust the photos towards him. "How did you?" "Don't insult me further with your lies," I spat. "I saw you with her, holding her, laughing with her." Roland regained his composure, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. "So what if I am? I'm a man with needs, Althea. Surely you didn't think I'd stay shackled forever?" White-hot rage surged through my veins, my vision blurring. Before I could stop myself, my palm connected with his cheek in a resounding slap. Roland recoiled, shooting me a venomous glare. "You'll regret that, you spiteful harpy." In that moment, something inside me shifted, the meek, devoted wife succumbing to the fury of the betrayed woman. No more lies, no more deception. Roland had awoken a beast he couldn't tame, and I would make him pay for every ounce of pain and humiliation. Whatever the cost, I would have my revenge. In the days following my confrontation with Roland, I found myself adrift in a tumultuous sea of anguish and rage. How could the man I had loved, the father of my children, so brazenly betray our sacred vows? I knew I couldn't weather this storm alone. Which is why one morning I found myself seated across from my dearest friend Marissa at a corner bistro, the air heavy with unspoken turmoil. "I need your help," I managed, fingering the handle of my coffee mug. The words felt like shards of glass in my mouth. Marissa's eyes widened, her expression a kaleidoscope of concern and curiosity. "What's going on, Allie? You know you can tell me anything." Drawing a steadying breath, I recounted the sordid tale of Roland's infidelity, each treacherous detail lacerating my heart anew. Marissa's face contorted with disbelief and fury. "That low-life bastard," she hissed, slamming her palm on the table. "After everything you've sacrificed for him and those kids?" I shook my head, my jaw set with grim determination. "I can't just walk away, Riss. He has to pay for what he's done. To me, to our family." Understanding flickered in Marissa's eyes as the gravity of my vendetta took shape. "You're sure about this? Because once we go down that road—" "I've never been more sure of anything," I stated with conviction. "Roland shattered the life we built through his selfish actions. Now it's time I return that disgrace tenfold upon him." A sly grin crept across Marissa's face. "Well then, we'd better get to work. I have a few ideas that'll make that philandering snake wish he never looked at another woman." And just like that, the gears of my machinations began turning. Over the ensuing weeks, Marissa and I meticulously assembled the architecture of my revenge, a scheme to decimate Roland's wealth, reputation, and the very facade of propriety he had hidden behind. We combed through financial records, collected incriminating evidence, and identified key power players in Roland's professional circle whose influence could aid our cause. No depth was too deep, no measure too extreme to repay the anguish Roland had inflicted. One humid evening, Marissa and I convened in her sunroom, papers and documentation strewn across the table like a Byzantine roadmap to Roland's undoing. "Are you sure you want to go this far?" Marissa asked, lips pursed with the weight of our plans. "Once it's done, there's no going back." I felt Roland's betrayal like a shard of ice in my heart, his depraved indifference fueling an inextinguishable flame of retribution. Nodding firmly, I stated, "He made his choices. Now he can live with the consequences." The die was cast. Roland's downfall was inevitable, a reckoning years in the making, and I would be the angelic force to usher in his demise. With the intricate plans solidifying, it was time to set the wheels in motion. I arranged to meet Roland at a downtown cafe, letting him believe it was an attempt at reconciliation. His arrogance would be his undoing. Roland sauntered in, his expression a blend of bravado and disdain. Well, to what do I owe this pleasure?" He slid into the booth across from me. "Please don't tell me you're still upset over that little indiscretion of mine." I fought to steady my breathing, to keep my rage measured. "This is no mere indiscretion, Roland. Your selfish actions have shattered the sacred trust between us." He scoffed, leaning back with a patronizing smirk. "You act as if I committed a crime. It was just a fling to satisfy certain needs you've been neglecting lately." White-hot fury licked at my edges, but I remained outwardly composed, the eye of the storm. "Is that what you tell yourself? That your depravity is justified because I couldn't satiate your endless appetites?" Roland's smugness faltered, realization creeping into his features. I was not here to plead for his repentance, but to execute a reckoning. Retrieving a manila envelope, I slid it across the table towards him. "In case you need a reminder of the depths of your unfaithfulness." His eyes went wide as he surveyed the contents, incriminating photos, video stills, bank records detailing funds siphoned into offshore accounts for his mistress. The evidence was irrefutable, his misdeeds laid bare in treacherous detail. "Where did you get these?" Roland's voice was tinged with panic, the first fissures in his well-constructed facade. Did you truly believe your lies and schemes would go undiscovered forever? I leaned forward, my gaze boring into him. You forfeited the right to hide behind deceit the moment you betrayed our family. His nostrils flared, jaw clenched in impotent rage. So what's your endgame here, Althea? To what depths will you stoop to sate this pathetic need for vengeance? Unfurling a document from the envelope, I slid it before him, terms for a divorce settlement that would leave him destitute, his finances and reputation in ruins. The choice is yours. Capitulate to these terms or brace for the complete and very public dismantling of the life you've built on deceit. Roland's face contorted in a sneer of disbelief and contempt. You arrogant, spiteful wench. Did you honestly think I would just roll over for this pathetic shakedown? Leaning back, I delivered my edict with finality. Very well, Roland. You've made your decision and soon you'll face the consequences. As I rose to depart, Roland grabbed my wrist in a crushing grip, his eyes glinting with malice. You'll regret crossing me, I can promise you that. Meeting his gaze with steely defiance, I wrenched free of his grasp. I believe you're the one who will be sorely regretting their choices soon enough. With that, I turned on my heel and strode out, adrenaline and conviction coursing through me. The gauntlet was thrown. Roland could either surrender or watch helplessly as his world burned to ashes. In the aftermath of my confrontation with Roland, the wheels of my intricate vengeance scheme began turning in earnest. He believed he could simply weather this squall, dismissing my terms as a desperate ploy. His arrogance would cost him dearly. First, I reached out to Derek's girlfriend, Sophia, under the pretense of planning a celebratory dinner for his college acceptance. In reality, it would be the stage for Roland's very public undoing. I want to do something really special to honor Derek's achievement, I told Sophia, carefully measuring my words. Perhaps at that new upscale restaurant downtown? Sophia's eyes lit up. Oh, that would be amazing. And we could invite your family, Derek's grandparents, coaches, make it a whole event. Exactly according to plan. Wonderful idea. I'll start compiling the guest list right away. Over the following days, I seeded the invitation far and wide through Roland's professional and social circles under the guise of honoring Derek. His business associates, high-profile clients, even his wretched mistress, all would bear witness to the unraveling of his deceitful life. The night before the fateful event, Marissa and I convened for final preparations, the pristine venue adorned with elegant decorations masking the sinister plot afoot. Everything's in place, I announced, unable to conceal my satisfaction. Once Roland arrives with his mistress in tow, the show will commence. Marissa grinned wickedly. That snake won't know what hit him. I'll be ready with the video evidence just in case he tries any delusional denials. An anticipatory tension thrummed through me as the visions of Roland's imminent downfall played through my mind. So drunk on power, he never suspected the devoted wife he tormented could orchestrate such a masterful retaliation. The following evening, the ruse was complete as guests filtered into the regal dining hall, Roland cutting a contemptuous figure as he worked the room with feigned congeniality. His mistress clung to his arm like a hideous ornament, utterly oblivious to the cataclysm that awaited. As the night carried on with perfunctory speeches and celebratory toasts, I could see the smug satisfaction radiating from Roland. In his deluded mind, my silence meant surrender, that I'd resigned myself to his subjugation. How mistaken he was. After Derek's heartfelt thanks to those gathered, I rose from my seat, Yadir announcing my presence with the ceremonial tapping of a champagne flute. All eyes turned towards me, the proverbial axe dangling overhead. Friends, esteemed colleagues, thank you all for being here to honor my son's incredible achievement, I began, my voice carrying an ominous calm. However, there is one individual here tonight who deserves no accolades, only utter condemnation. Mutters of confusion rippled through the crowd as I locked eyes with Roland's suddenly pallid form. For too long, Roland Wallace has carried on a charade of deceit and infidelity, dishonoring his family while squandering his professional integrity to fund his tawdry indiscretions. In one deft motion, I produced the damning evidence from within the folds of my gown, bank statements, salacious video segments, all corroborating every lurid detail of Roland's lies and betrayals. A collective gasp washed over the audience as the stark reality emerged. Roland tried shouting his denials, but I silenced him with a razor-sharp edict. These are the choices you made without a second thought for the family you discarded so willfully. And now you shall face the consequences of your selfish depravity, both personally and professionally. The first ardo fell as respected associates turned on Roland in palpable disdain. His mistress, now the subject of scrutiny, withered in humiliation. As disorder erupted around us, Roland fought towards me with murderous rage contorting his features. But I stood immovable, righteously immersed in the bonfire of his undoing, a force of karmic reckoning he never imagined possible. Chaos erupted as the weight of Roland's depraved transgressions dawned upon the assembled guests. His mistress dissolved into hysterics, frantically fleeing the scene as scathing rebukes rained down. But Roland remained defiantly rooted, his face contorted into a mask of disbelieving rage. "You vile, vindictive shrew!" he bellowed, clawing towards me with outstretched hands. "I'll see you ruined for this." Unflinching, I held my ground as security personnel intervened, restraining Roland's furious attempted assault. Around us, the atmosphere morphed from one of genteel celebration to raucous bedlam. "Enough of your blustering denials," I declared, my voice cutting through the din. "The evidence speaks for itself, your lies and betrayals laid bare for all to witness." Marissa emerged, commanding the room's attention with an air of uncompromising authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, I fear there is more." With a few deft keystrokes, she queued up the video compilation chronicling Roland's lurid indiscretions. Footage of clandestine rendezvous, furtive money transfers, even amorous trysts in various locales. Each sordid vignette manifested on the viewing screens with cinematic intensity, an unblinking indictment of his depravity. A chorus of gasps and muttered expletives washed over the crowd as the graphic nature of Roland's unfaithfulness unfolded in high-definition debauchery. His respected corporate partners looked on in abject revulsion, once bright professional futures now clouded by the stain of his impropriety. "No. No, you can't do this!" Roland's voice cracked with panic as the walls closed in. "This is entrapment, you hear me? Lies and manipulations." I fixed him with a withering glare. "The only lies here are the ones you've perpetuated for far too long, Roland. This is merely the karmic reckoning you've brought upon yourself through your selfish, reprehensible actions." Shaking his head in disbelief, Roland noticed several attendees already making for the exits, phones in hand as the scandal achieved escape velocity into the public sphere. The once vaunted Titan was unraveling before our very eyes, the ground fracturing beneath his inflated sense of impunity. When the final damning frame faded to black, the grand hall descended into a maelstrom of heated denunciations and furious recriminations. Roland weathered the blows, both verbal and physical, like a scorned dog surrounded by angry owners. For all his bluster, his world was crumbling to ashes, an empire of lies and deceit razed by the scorching truth. Seizing a moment of relative calm, I addressed the remnants. "For those inclined to stand in judgment of my actions, know this: I am not the transgressor here. My motives are those of moral consequence and justifiable retribution for innumerable throngs of betrayed spouses who lacked a voice or the means to confront such unforgivable affronts." My gaze found Roland, his arrogant veneer in tatters as the gravity of his ruination took hold. "This is the reckoning you rightfully earned through your repugnant choices, Roland. From this moment, your ill-begotten fortune and reputation lay in ashes, a pyre of your own gluttonous misdeeds." Scooping Derek close, I turned to face the surviving witnesses, resolve etched into my features. Let this serve as a warning to those who would inflict such gratuitous harm upon their families through infidelity and deceit. There are consequences that extend far beyond your selfish indulgences. Righteous justice will inevitably enact its toll. As the disgraced guests filtered out, Roland remained a broken husk, the epic downfall of a man undone by his own unchecked hubris and moral insolence. His past malefactions had conceived a very public tribulation, one from which he may never recover. The air was thick with the acrid smoke of ruination, and I inhaled deeply, savoring the intoxicating aroma of my decisive triumph. In the aftermath of that fateful evening, the shockwaves reverberated through every facet of Roland's once gilded existence. The uncompromising disclosure of his debauchery achieved nuclear force, eviscerating professional alliances and reducing his personal life to scorched earth. Within days, Roland's position at the prestigious investment firm was unceremoniously terminated. Corporate cohorts who once praised his abilities now recoiled at the mere mention of his name, his reputation toxic in the extreme. I savored the delicious irony. For a man who placed such emphasis on status and financial prowess, his downfall in those hallowed arenas landed like a brutal karmic backhanded slap. The legal ramifications proved equally severe. Allegations of misappropriated funds, influence peddling, and illicit financial maneuvers launched myriad investigations by regulatory bodies. Roland's assets were frozen, properties seized, and that once immaculate facade of affluence crumbled like a condemned building. "You've won, you spiteful harpy," he railed during one particularly heated altercation. "I hope you're satisfied seeing everything I built turn to ash." Eyeing him with disdain, I stated, "I'm merely a bystander to your self-immolation, Roland. Your arrogance and depravity encoded the self-destruct sequence long ago. I simply helped it along to its inevitable conclusion." As his world disintegrated, Roland adopted the fatal miscalculation that lashing out at me could turn the tide. He inundated my phone with threatening messages and vulgar diatribes, unintelligible rants filled with baseless denials and pathetic appeals for reprieve. But I batted them aside like insignificant flies. His snarls had long since lost their power over me. The final dagger came when an outpouring of damning testimonies hit the media. Whispers from personal assistants, alleged paramours, even members of Roland's own family. Each lurid account further cemented his infamy as a philanderer without remorse, validating my motives in spectacular fashion. Throughout the chaos, I carried myself with steadfast resolution and a sage-like grace. While Roland lashed out with desperation, savaging lives in his wake, I remained the consummate image of a woman reclaiming her dignity. His ire, so terrifying before, now felt like the petty tantrums of a petulant child. And just as swiftly as he ascended, the mighty Roland Wallace plummeted back to earth, bankrupt, destitute, and utterly alone, but for his own self-constructed legacy of shame. In time, the divorce proceedings concluded with the dissection of our once unified assets. Roland relinquished the sprawling estate, the offshore investment accounts, even the rights to his deluxe vehicles. I insisted on minimizing his share, allowing only enough to sustain his pathetic existence, a perpetual reminder of what he squandered through arrogance and immorality. Yet, through this merciless legal flaying, Roland never once acknowledged his culpability. If anything, his bitterness festered like an untreated spiritual malignancy. "I hope you rot, Althea," he snarled at our final court appearance, ignoring the barrage of camera flashes. "You've destroyed me out of nothing but spite. I hope you drown in the misery you've—" His toxic tirade was mercifully drowned out as the bailiffs ushered him out, his features twisted in impotent rage. That once proud, self-assured visage had decayed into a grotesque caricature, a victim of his own unchecked sins manifested in physical and psychological ruin. As I watched Roland's unhanded departure into exile, the faintest glimmer of pity tugged at the corners of my psyche. This broken, wretched creature was of his own forging, the ultimate architect of his extravagant demise. He could have chosen fidelity, could have honored his solemn vows. But swiftly quashing that fleeting ember of compassion, I turned to face the future. A brilliant new dawn breaking on the horizon, one of infinite possibility, unburdened by Roland's toxic presence. My path ahead was one of personal renaissance, motherly devotion, and an unflinching refusal to let past traumas define me or my family. Roland's fire had been extinguished. Now the real work of reclaiming our lives could finally begin. With Roland's depraved influence finally excised, a long-overdue sense of peace washed over our fractured family. The years of turmoil and manipulation had taken their toll, but we emerged from the ashes hardened yet hopeful. Derek, having witnessed the full extent of his father's disgraceful unraveling, displayed a newfound sense of resolve. Gone was the shy, introverted young man. In his place stood an academic professional brimming with purpose and an aversion to the entitled mindset that enabled Roland's transgressions. "I don't know how you maintained your strength through all that, Mom," he said one evening as we shared a bottle of wine on the patio. "If I went through the betrayal you endured, I'm not sure I could have handled it with such poise." Squeezing his hand, I smiled. The perseverance came from reminding myself that Roland's sins were not my own burden to carry. His failings were born of selfishness, not any shortcoming on our part. Derek nodded soberly. I hate that I idolized him for so long, put him up on a pedestal. To see that vapid charade exposed was gut-wrenching. The hardest truths often are, I conceded. But we cannot let the actions of one deeply flawed man define our trajectories. Your father's moral frailty should inspire you to uphold a higher standard, not ruthlessly pursue the vices that proved his downfall. A glimmer of resolution shone in Derek's eyes as he processed my words. In that moment, I realized the harrowing saga had irrevocably shaped his worldview, instilling uncompromising values while tempering the more self-destructive obsessions that corroded Roland's soul. If Derek represented the hope for masculine redemption, Lily embodied the radiant resilience that could only blossom from hardships endured. The once timid, uncertain young woman emerged vibrant and self-assured, embracing her passions with a palpable zeal. "Boys, parties, social status, none of that matters anymore," she declared during a heart-to-heart shortly after her high school graduation. "After witnessing Dad's pathetic denouement, I know what's really important, forging your own identity through achievements that genuinely enrich lives." Her gaze was clear, focused, unencumbered by the adolescent insecurities that plagued so many of her peers. "We get one spark of existence to illuminate this world. I don't intend to waste it chasing mirages of fleeting validation." In that moment, I swelled with a mother's pride, realizing Lily had distilled a wisdom far exceeding her years, a gift born from the searing crucible that was our shared trauma. She was not a victim absorbing the callous doctrine of her father, but a powerful elixir tempering the toxic lessons of his moral frailty. And what of me? In the aftermath of our collective liberation, I refocused my energy into enriching the community around me. Speaking engagements, counseling services, outreach initiatives, all designed to provide a guiding light to those negotiating the treacherous tides of infidelity and its consequences. My story resonated deeply, the once denigrated wife emerging as a pillar of strength through justified retribution. I became living proof that even the most harrowingly traumatic betrayals could be alchemized into redemptive gold. The infidelity support group I founded accumulated a devoted following, including defiant spouses seeking righteous emancipation and chastened paramours atoning for their own descent into temptation. "Your courage showed me the light," one young woman confessed through grateful tears. "Because of your example, I gathered every shred of proof and exposed my deceitful husband. I've reclaimed my dignity, my future." Such testimonies made every anguished step along this harrowing journey worthwhile. The shadow Roland once cast over our family had dissipated. Replacing it shone a brilliant new dawn, one of principled resolve, achievement, and the empowering truth that personal short-sightedness need not dilute our collective radiance. As I looked back over the tumultuous path that led us here, I realized the stabbing pangs of betrayal had long since given way to a bone-deep sense of kismet. Our anguish paved the road to rebirth, a permanent severance from the toxic cycles enabling Roland's depravity. In the end, his greatest sins catalyzed our most monumental triumphs, an emancipation more fulfilling and absolute than he could have ever comprehended through his veiled existence. The old Althea, subservient, naively devoted, she was dead, entombed alongside my disgraced husband's legacy. In her place rose the radiant phoenix, mother, warrior, inspiration. An intrinsic force of nature as humble as it is formidable, no longer defined by the sins of a broken man, but the virtues emanating from the family he once shattered. Our new dawn had arrived, and I basked in its infinite potential, with the hard-won satisfaction of the miraculously redeemed.